A poor girl is kicked out of a car dealership by the manager. "This is no place for beggars," she replies. "I just wanted to see the cars my dad loved so much." A young billionaire sees it all, and upon discovering who her father was, his life changes forever. The alarm rang at 5:30 in the morning. Rachel opened her eyes in the dark, and for a second her hand slid over to the empty side of the bed. A year later, and she still expected to find Marcus there. The silence of the small, humble house felt like a damp blanket. Rachel pushed aside the patched blankets and carefully stood so she wouldn't make noise on the creaking wooden floor. She slipped on her worn restaurant uniform and tied her dark hair into a tight ponytail. The cracked mirror showed deep circles under her eyes that no makeup could conceal, even if she could afford any. Before leaving the room, Rachel stopped by the door to the adjacent one. Ava lay curled up under thin blankets, clutching a small blue toy car to her chest. The toy, already worn and peeling, was all that remained after nearly everything else had been sold. Even in sleep, the child's small fingers kept a firm grip on the car, as if afraid of losing it. Just like her father, Rachel thought, swallowing the lump in her throat. The car had been a gift from Marcus. "One day I'll show you real cars, princess. The fastest, most beautiful cars in the world," he had promised. It was a promise that would never be fulfilled. Rachel closed the door carefully and went to the kitchen. She opened the nearly empty refrigerator and prepared Ava's breakfast. A glass of milk diluted with water and the last slice of bread with jam. She left a note on the back of an envelope. "Have a great day, my love. Mrs. Patel will pick you up for lunch. I'll be back by 10. I love you very much." On the peeling wall, the bills were piling up, attached with tape to the noisy fridge. 4 months of overdue rent and eviction notices. Cut-off warnings for gas and electricity. Rachel had pleaded for more time from her creditors, but they were running out of patience. When Marcus was alive, they never had luxuries, but neither did they lack the basics. Now every penny mattered. There was no life insurance, no savings. The money borrowed from friends had run out in a few weeks, swallowed by the simple funeral. She grabbed her ripped purse and keys. For a moment, her gaze fell on the cracked picture frame on the shelf, the last photo of the three of them together. Marcus with Ava perched on his shoulders, both laughing as he pretended to stumble. Rachel remembered that day perfectly, the smell of freshly cut grass in the park, the sense that nothing could go wrong. 16 hours a day, 7 days a week. That was how much Rachel worked now. Before Marcus died, she had only been a waitress. His salary as a mechanic paid the bills. Alone and without money to raise their daughter, she started taking on cleaning jobs in a more upscale neighborhood nearby. Thursdays, she cleaned Mrs. Hoffman's house. Saturdays, she organized the Chen's basement. Sundays, she scrubbed the floors at a grocery store. Even so, she couldn't cover all her expenses. The first thing to go had been Ava's school tuition. "It's just for a while," she had explained to Ava, who didn't understand why she could no longer see her friends. Rachel locked the front door of the tiny house with a makeshift latch. The original lock had broken, and the landlord refused to fix it, and walked to the bus stop. The sky was beginning to lighten over the rundown neighborhood. She couldn't afford the bus every day, so she alternated. 3 days of walking, 2 days of taking the bus to spare her blistered feet. Today was a bus day, a small luxury. On the overcrowded bus, Rachel got a seat by the window. She leaned her forehead against the grimy glass, and tears came, silent and quick. She wiped them away with her worn sleeve before anyone noticed. Nobody could know that inside she was drowning. At night, when Ava was asleep, Rachel let herself collapse. Sitting on the bathroom's cracked tiled floor, she cried until there was no strength left in her. The thin walls didn't block sound, and she feared her daughter might wake up and see her despair. But during the day, she wore a brave face. It was the only thing she could give her daughter, the illusion that everything would be okay. The restaurant was already busy when she arrived. Rachel stashed her purse in a locker, tied a stained apron around her waist, and prepared for another day. Forced smiles for tips, heavy trays, irritable customers. It was like starring in an endless play. "Good morning, Rachel. How's little Ava?" asked Diane, the hostess. "She's fine, thanks." "Growing quickly," Rachel answered with a practiced smile. Diane didn't know that after leaving, Rachel would still clean 2 bathrooms and 3 bedrooms at Mrs. Peterson's house, who paid little, but at least gave her a sandwich afterward. A sandwich Rachel would split with Ava at dinner. What no one saw were the times she hid in the pantry, taking deep breaths, fighting off panic, the constant fear that she couldn't make it, or the nights she came home with hands red and cracked from the cheap detergent, stinging as she cooked dinner. Before Marcus died, her hands were soft and he always commented on them. Now they were unrecognizable, just like her life. Over the last few months, Rachel had lost so much weight that her bones were visible under her skin. She ate only half a meal a day, saving what she could for Ava. The restaurant manager allowed her to bring home leftovers. Those leftovers had become her main source of food. "Table 7, called out the chef, pushing 2 plates onto the counter. She grabbed them and walked over. A young couple in love, holding hands. They barely noticed as she placed the food in front of them. A sharp pang hit Rachel's chest. She and Marcus used to be like that, smiling as though sharing a secret. Now all that remained were memories. A small blue toy car a little girl refused to let go of, and rough hands from cleaning other people's houses while trying to keep her own. But when her shift ended, when she opened the door and Ava ran to embrace her with a smile that could light up the world, Rachel found the strength to keep going. For her child, and only her, Rachel kept her head high and fought the darkness. The day would be long, another among so many others, identical and exhausting. But in the midst of pain and fatigue, Rachel knew there was still a promise to fulfill. Not Marcus's promise to Ava, but her own to both of them, the promise to survive. The small house door closed at 5:30 in the morning. Rachel left for another long workday. As always, she left a note on the kitchen table and prepared food in the fridge. "Don't open the door for anyone. Stay indoors. I'll be back by 10. I love you, my love." Ava remained at home, as she did every day. No money for daycare or babysitters, no neighbors available to babysit. Just the faith that this little girl, far too young for such responsibilities, would know how to manage herself until her mother returned. For a few hours, Ava followed her usual routine. She ate the breakfast her mum left, watched cartoons on the ancient TV that only got 2 channels, and played with her blue toy car, imagining races and adventures. But that day, something different happened. While she gazed out the window, Ava watched a shiny navy blue car pass by. It was large and glistened in the same shade of blue as her little toy car. The vehicle slowed a bit on the pitted street, and for a moment, Ava could see its fancy interior before it sped away around the corner. "Just like Dad's," she whispered, holding her small car tightly. The memory came clearly. Her father sitting at the kitchen table, flipping through car magazines, pointing out different models to her. "One day, princess, I'll show you real cars and the fastest and most beautiful in the world." She'd hardly understood his words, but she loved the way his eyes lit up whenever he talked about engines and speed. An idea formed in her head. What if she followed that car to see where it went? Just a quick peek, she'd be back before anyone knew. Ava knew she wasn't supposed to go out. Her mom always insisted, never ever go out by yourself. But the blue car beckoned like a magnet. It was as though her father himself was sending her a signal. She put on the oversized coat, a donation from a local church, and tucked the toy car into her pocket. Standing at the door, she paused for a moment, reading the note from her mom on the table. Then, determined, she left and closed the door. The neighborhood was a mix of simple homes and abandoned buildings. She rarely went beyond the small corner market or the bus stop where she'd sometimes wait with her mom. But she had watched the car turn right, so she went in that direction. With every block Ava passed, the scenery changed. Bare brick walls turned into painted fences. The cracked sidewalks turned smooth. After 20 minutes of walking, she arrived at an avenue she had never seen. That's when she saw it, a row of gleaming cars behind a large glass pane. A dealership called Premium Motors occupied the entire building, its mirrored facade waving flags above the entrance. And there, right in the center of the showroom, was the same navy blue car she'd seen before, shining like it stepped out of a dream. Ava approached slowly, mesmerized. It looked just like the little car in her pocket, except 1,000 times bigger and more impressive. Her father would have loved it. She could almost hear his voice. "See, princess, that's the kind of car I told you about." The dealership doors were wide open. Men in suits walked around inside. Gentle music played over speakers. Everything was clean, bright, and a bit intimidating, but the blue car called to her. Ava took one step inside, then another. No one noticed the small figure in an oversized coat and messy hair. She moved with cat-like caution, hoping not to be seen. The floor was polished enough to reflect her image. When she got close, she stopped. The car was even more stunning in person. The metal reflected the ceiling lights like a magical mirror. Through the window, she could see the interior. Leather seats, a dashboard filled with buttons and lights, almost like a spaceship cockpit. "Dad would have loved you," she said softly to the car, taking her little toy from her pocket. She compared the colors, nearly identical. "Hey, what are you doing here? This is no place for beggars." The harsh voice startled her. Ava turned around to see a tall man in a gray suit walking towards her quickly, a scowl on his face. "Where are your parents?" He looked around, searching for an adult. "I was just looking. I wanted to see the cars my dad loved," Ava explained quietly, clutching her toy. "Looking?" The man scoffed humorlessly. His name badge read, "Dennis Cook, Sales Manager." "This isn't a playground. These cars cost more than your family will ever see in a lifetime." Ava took a step back, her cheeks burning. "You need to leave. Now." Dennis pointed at the door. "We don't have time for stray kids, and don't touch anything. These cars are for real customers." The words hurt more than Ava expected. She hadn't touched anything. She'd only wanted to look. The man went on. "Come on, out. I have important clients coming in. Can't have you making a mess in the showroom." On the other side of the dealership, a younger man entered. He was tall, wearing a suit tailored to perfection, dark hair slicked back. He stopped upon noticing the scene, his cold blue eyes narrowing slightly. Ava started to walk toward the door, shoulders slumped. As she passed close to the dark-suited man, she whispered so softly only he could hear, "I just wanted to see the cars my dad loved." Her gaze remained down, fixed on the glossy floor, so she didn't see how her words affected him. Something flickered in his expression, a wave of emotion breaking through the cold exterior. Dennis Cook scarcely noticed the other man's presence. He marched Ava toward the exit, grumbling under his breath. "Kids from this neighborhood. I don't know why we don't have security at the door. Last thing we need is little vandals." Ava exited into the sunlight, which blinded her momentarily. She sat on the step of a shuttered store a few yards away, unsure of what to do or how to get back home. Now that her adventure had ended so badly, she realized she didn't actually know the way back. She'd never walked this far before. Inside, Eli Walker remained by the cars, watching the child leave. Something about the situation unsettled him deeply, though he couldn't articulate what. He had come to maybe purchase a new vehicle, possibly the navy blue one. As a billionaire and the CEO of one of the biggest tech companies in the country, Eli could afford any car he wanted. Dennis approached him with a servile grin. "Mr. Walker, it's an honor to have you at our dealership. I'm sorry for the inconvenience. Kids from those poorer neighborhoods sometimes wander in. I was just ushering her out so I could properly attend to you." Eli didn't reply. He still looked at the door Ava had gone through. "Mr. Walker, would you like to see our Phantom model? We have multiple colors, but the navy blue is particularly striking." "Who was that child?" Eli asked, his voice restrained but intense enough to make Dennis swallow nervously. "Some stray, sir. From across the train tracks, I suppose. They send kids to beg or cause trouble." Eli finally turned to Dennis, observing him closely, as though measuring his character. "She didn't appear to be begging or causing trouble." Dennis gave a nervous chuckle. "You never know with those sorts of people. We like to be cautious." "What did she say to you? Right at the end?" Dennis shrugged. "Said something. I didn't hear." Eli didn't press the matter. He started heading for the exit. "I'll come back later." "But, Mr. Walker, the Phantom, it can wait." His tone left no room for argument. "Julian, let's go." Nearby stood an older man in a conservative suit, holding a tablet. Julian nodded and fell in step behind him. Outside, Ava stared at the toy in her hands, wondering if she could find her way back. Her mother would be furious if she discovered Ava had gone out alone. "Hello," a deep, calm voice. Ava lifted her head to see the suited man from the showroom. Behind him, the older man waited a short distance away. Ava grew tense, ready to flee. She stood quickly. "I'm sorry. I'm already leaving." "No," Eli said, this time more softly. "It's all right. You can stay." A small, uncomfortable pause ensued. Eli Walker wasn't used to talking to kids. In fact, he barely spoke to anyone outside business circles. Some called him the Ice Prince, brilliant, relentless, but emotionally distant. A man who could close billion-dollar deals without flinching. But something about this girl had slipped under his defenses. Her remark about her father's love for cars had struck him in a place he'd forgotten he had. "I heard what you said inside," he began awkwardly. "About your dad." Ava clutched the toy car. "He loved cars." "Is that his?" Eli gestured toward the little car. Ava nodded. "Last gift he gave me, before the accident." The word accident hung heavy in the air. Eli felt a tightness in his chest, an uncomfortable sensation he didn't recognize. "My name is Eli," he managed to say, holding out his hand as if in a meeting. Realizing how odd that was, he pulled it back. "I'm Ava," the little girl said, her large dark eyes taking him in with curiosity and wariness. "Ava," he repeated, as if testing the name. "So, that blue car inside, it really was beautiful, wasn't it?" Ava's expression brightened. "Just like mine." She showed him her little car, except mine is only a toy. Eli considered the small item. It was an older model, its paint chipped, but obviously cared for. "Your dad, he liked cars like that." She nodded vigorously. "He fixed them. He was a mechanic. Yes, he always said one day he would show me the fastest, as prettiest cars in the world." Her voice faltered. "But now he can't." Julian, watching from a distance, had never seen his boss in such a personal conversation. In over 10 years with Eli Walker, he'd witnessed the man finalize million-dollar deals without blinking, fire top executives without regret, and build his empire on cold logic. To see him clumsily talking to a small child about toy cars was something altogether unexpected. "Ava," Eli said, coming to a sudden decision, "would you like to see the blue car up close?" From the inside, Ava's face lit up with pure joy, and Eli felt a peculiar squeeze in his chest. "For real? I believe we can arrange it." He glanced over at Julian. "Could you talk to the manager? I'd like a few words with Miss Ava." Julian nodded promptly. "Yes, sir." As Julian went back in, Eli sat down on the curb near Ava. It was surreal. The billionaire Han in an expensive suit, sitting on a dirty sidewalk next to a child in oversized clothes. "So your dad was a mechanic," Eli remarked, seeking to fill the silence. Ava nodded. "He'd fix everyone's car in the neighborhood. People would call him whenever they had any problems. He must have been really good." Her eyes shone. "He said he could listen to how the car felt, like a doctor but for engines." Eli smiled. That smile was so rare, Julian would have been stunned had he seen it. "When I grow up," continued Ava, "I want to fix cars too, just like Dad." Something about that childlike resolve touched Eli. It made him think vaguely of his own dreams from childhood, long since abandoned in his relentless pursuit of corporate success. Julian returned, leading an uneasy-looking Dennis Cook. "Mr. Walker," Dennis said nervously, "it would be my pleasure to let your young friend see the vehicle." Eli stood and held out a hand to Ava. She hesitated only a moment before taking it. Together, they walked back into the dealership. "We call this model the Phantom," Dennis explained, all smiles now, guiding Eli and Ava to the blue car. "It's our fastest model currently." Dennis unlocked it and opened the driver's side door. The cream leather interior gleamed under the bright lights. "Would you like to climb in?" Eli asked. Ava nodded silently. Eli hoisted her onto the driver's seat, much too high for her little legs. She seemed so small up there, feet miles from the pedals, hands gingerly touching the wheel. "My dad would love this," she whispered. He was always talking about cars like this. Eli watched how fascinated she was by every detail on the dashboard, her eyes glowing with that special magic only children have. He sensed a transformation inside himself, like walls beginning to crack. "Could we start the engine?" Eli asked Dennis. Dennis hesitated. "Well, typically we don't do that in here. Let's make an exception," Eli interrupted, the kind of tone that implied it wasn't really a question. Dennis gulped. "Of course." He leaned in to press the ignition button. The engine purred, quiet but strong, and Ava gasped, both startled and thrilled. The entire dashboard lit up, casting colorful reflections on her face. "Wow," she breathed, then placed her little toy on the real car's dashboard. "Look, they match." Another smile from Eli, again that rarity which would have left Julian speechless. For a few minutes, Eli asked Dennis details about the controls, rephrasing them so Ava could understand. She listened intently, asking surprisingly clever questions. Eventually, Ava noticed the dashboard clock. "I have to go," she said abruptly, her face worried. "My mum will be mad if she knows I left the house." Eli nodded and helped her out. "Thanks for showing me your car," he told her, surprising himself with his gentle tone. The girl smiled, a smile that illuminated her entire being. "Thank you for letting me see my dad's car." My dad's car. The phrase hit Eli like a physical blow. A vehicle he had seen only as a sign of status meant so much more to this little girl, a tangible connection to the father she'd lost. "Will you be able to find your way home?" he asked, realizing her situation. Ava looked to the street, showing some apprehension. "I think so." "Julian," Eli called over, "could you escort Ava near her house?" Julian nodded, smiling kindly at the child. "I'd be happy to help, Miss Ava." The girl looked uncertain. "But I can't bring strangers home. My mom told me never to do that," Eli pondered. "Julian can at least walk you close by so you won't get lost." Ava agreed with a slight nod. She started for the door but paused to turn back around. "Mr. Eli?" "Yes?" "Thank you for not being like the angry man." Then she left, the tiny figure holding her toy car, accompanied by Julian, who rarely left his boss's side unless it was for serious business. Eli stood there next to the gleaming blue Phantom, feeling oddly hollow. For the first time in ages, perhaps ever in his adult life, he had felt something beyond the cold calculations that defined him. He was uncertain how to handle it. Dennis Cook, having half overheard this exchange, drew near with caution. "Mr. Walker, so, how about the Phantom? Would you like to finalize the purchase now?" Eli studied the manager, seeing him in an entirely new way. "The way you treat a child speaks volumes about who you are, Mr. Cook." Dennis swallowed. "Sir? I'm not interested in the car anymore." Eli walked away, heading for the door. "But Mr. Walker..." Eli paused. "I'll be phoning the dealership owner. Jim Reynolds is an old friend. We might talk about certain customer service practices." His words were calm but final. Dennis Cook paled. Exiting the dealership, Eli noticed his hands were trembling a bit. Something had shifted. That strict fortress he kept around himself had cracked, and through the gap, something new was seeping in. He wanted to know more about Ava, about her father, about her life. For the first time in a very long while, Eli Walker was interested in someone else's story more than in himself. And that scared him more than any financial crisis he'd faced. He couldn't sleep that night. The bright lights of New York poured through his penthouse's glass walls, illuminating the expensive furnishings of the top-floor apartment in one of the city's costliest buildings. Everything inside was pristine, functional, luxurious, the perfect reflection of a man like him, cold, precise, impressive, but entirely devoid of genuine warmth. Alone in the dark, Eli twirled a little blue toy car in his hands. Before parting ways, Ava had insisted he take it. "But it's yours," he protested. "You can give it back later," she replied, with the unassailable logic only a child can have. "That way, you'll have to visit me again." Julian, discreet as ever, had simply watched. Eli knew his assistant was just as surprised by this turn of events, a scenario where Eli Walker would feel compelled to visit someone else, especially a child from a poor background, unannounced. That was out of character for him. Restless, Eli decided he couldn't wait. He picked up the phone. "Julian," he said. It didn't matter that it was nearly midnight. "I need you to dig up some information for me." Julian didn't hesitate. "Yes, sir, what do you need?" "That little girl from the dealership, Ava. Who she is, who her parents are, everything. I want the details." "Understood. When would you like it?" "Have it on my desk by tomorrow morning." A slight pause. "I'll be there at 8, sir." Eli hung up. He set the toy car on his nightstand, staring at the ceiling. Why had this little girl affected him so profoundly? He was never fond of children, nor did he pay much attention to people outside his business circles. Yet there was something in Ava's eyes, in the innocent way she clung to that precious memory of her dad, in how she viewed the expensive showroom car as a direct link to a father who was gone. Eli didn't understand connections like that. His own upbringing had been shaped by prestigious boarding schools and rarely seen parents, no cherished toy cars or Sunday trips, just constant performance targets. Achievements never good enough. He was already awake by the time the sun rose. After showering and dressing in one of his polished suits, he headed to work. On the drive, he noticed every navy blue car on the road, a color that had never mattered to him until now. Julian was already waiting when Eli arrived, dark circles under his eyes but impeccably dressed, holding a folder of documents. "Good morning, sir," he said, following Eli into the office. As soon as the door closed, Eli asked, "What did you find out?" Julian consulted the folder. "The girl's name is Ava Lane. She's 5 daughters, only child of Marcus and Rachel Lane." Eli motioned impatiently for him to continue. "Marcus Lane was a mechanic, employed at Grayson & Sons. He passed away in a car accident a little over a year ago, driving home from work. The other vehicle crossed into his lane." The name held no meaning for Eli, but he still felt uneasy, as though there was some missing puzzle piece. The mother, Rachel Lane, was a part-time waitress until Marcus died. Then she took on full-time hours plus other cleaning jobs to provide for Ava. Eli's expression darkened. "So the girl is alone while her mother works?" "That's correct. There's no record of her attending any daycare, no babysitter. The address is in West Ridge, one of the poorest parts of the city." "Do you have the exact address?" Julian handed him a slip of paper. Eli placed it in his suit pocket. "Anything else about the father, Marcus Lane?" Julian double-checked his notes. "By all accounts, he was well liked in the neighborhood. No criminal record, taxes paid, active in a local church." He hesitated. "He was known to fix cars for free if people couldn't afford it." Eli absorbed all of this. There was nothing extraordinary about the story. An ordinary working-class family struggling after losing a breadwinner. Similar things happened daily. Why was this particular situation affecting him? "Marcus Lane," he murmured, testing the name. No recollection. Yet he felt deeply unsettled. "Sir," Julian asked, "if I may, why the interest in this specific family?" The question surprised Eli. Rarely did Julian prod at his motivations. "I'm not certain," he answered candidly. "It's just something about the girl, the way she spoke of her father." Julian waited, but Eli let the sentence trail off. Instead, he strode to the window, gazing at a city that loomed indifferently. Inside, something churned, intangible and persistent. "Cancel my appointments," Eli ordered finally. "All of them, sir." "Yes. And have the car ready in 30 minutes. "Right away. Should I ask where we're going?" Eli reached for the small blue toy in his jacket pocket, looking at it absently. "We're returning this." Julian simply nodded and stepped out. Eli found himself alone, spinning the toy in his hands, a simple, chipped little car that felt oddly out of place in this tower of wealth. In the last several years, every decision Eli made was driven by detached logic. Acting on impulse or emotion was unheard of for him. People called him the Ice Prince. Still, here he was, about to skip an entire day of critical meetings, chasing the child who had lent him her father's car. Something nagged at him. A sense that he was missing something, or that an answer to an unasked question was close. The name Marcus Lane still triggered no memory. Yet, tucking the toy into his blazer pocket, Eli sighed, He despised mysteries, especially within himself. Maybe seeing where Ava lived would settle his mind, or maybe it would just intensify his suspicion that there was more to this story than he realized. Regardless, Eli Walker didn't shy away from challenges, especially not ones that kept him awake at night. And now, for the first time in years, he found himself genuinely curious about someone else. When Julian announced that the car was ready, he found his boss standing by the window with an expression he'd never seen, one that combined resolve and the slightest hint of vulnerability. "To West Ridge, sir?" asked Julian. Eli nodded. To West Ridge. As they descended in the elevator, Eli wondered what he expected to find at this small house in a rundown area. Answers. Or only more questions. Either way, something told him that this visit would spark a change in his life. And for the first time in years, Eli Walker had no idea what to expect. The car cruised slowly through West Ridge. As they left the city center, the landscape changed drastically. Skyscrapers and flashy storefronts gave way to small shops with barred windows, shabby buildings, and modest houses needing repairs. Julian drove in silence, occasionally consulting the GPS to confirm the directions. Eli looked out the window, noticing details he usually ignored. Children on a makeshift playground, an older man fixing a bicycle on the sidewalk, a woman hanging laundry on a line strung between poles. "We're almost there," Julian noted, turning onto a narrow street flanked by small and close-set homes. Eli nodded, feeling a strange apprehension. How would he explain why he'd come? "Your daughter gave me her toy, and now I'm weirdly obsessed with returning it," seemed unconvincing. "Park here," he said, pointing at the address a short distance away. "Don't get too close. I'd rather not draw attention." Julian parked at a discreet distance. The Lane home was tiny, with a narrow porch and a little front yard that clearly needed care. The pale blue paint was peeling, some roof shingles were missing, and the fence was crooked. "Would you like me to accompany you?" Julian asked. "No. Wait here." Eli hesitated before opening the car door. This was so unlike him. In his typical world, each movement was carefully calculated. Everything had its cost-benefit analysis. Impulses didn't factor in. Yet here he was, stepping into an unknown neighborhood for no logical reason beyond a conversation with a 5-year-old. Before he could change his mind, Eli got out. His immaculate suit looked ridiculous in these dusty surroundings. He took a few steps toward the house, then came to a stop in surprise. Ava was sitting on the sidewalk in front of the house, playing with another small blue toy car, even more battered than the one she had shown him. She wore a plain dress, her hair in slightly messy pigtails, and seemed fully immersed in her own world, driving her car along imaginary paths in the cracked concrete and making engine noises with her mouth. For a moment, Eli simply observed her, unsure if he should walk back, but Ava glanced up and instantly recognized him, her expression lit with immediate delight. "Mr. Eli," she exclaimed, hopping to her feet, "you really came." The spontaneous joy in her voice caught him off guard. He was unused to people truly being happy to see him. They were usually polite, wary, or opportunistic, rarely genuinely glad. "Hello, Ava," he said quietly. "Did you bring my car?" she asked hopefully, eyeing his hands. "I did." He produced it from his pocket. "Just like I promised." Ava accepted the toy with great care, as if it were a treasure. "Thank you for keeping it safe. It was my dad's." "I figured," Eli said softly. "So, you have 2 identical cars now?" She shook her head. "This older one," she explained, holding up the toy she'd been using to play. "Dad gave it to me when I was a baby. Then he gave me the other one later, so now I have them both again." A silent pause. Eli took in the shabby yard, the peeling paint on the house, the absence of any adult. "Is your mom home?" Ava shrugged. "She's at work. She'll be back late." Eli frowned. "You spend the entire day here alone." Another shrug. "Sometimes Mrs. Miller checks on me. She lives over there," Ava pointed vaguely. "But she had to take her cat to the vet today." The ease with which Ava explained her circumstances disturbed Eli. A child this young shouldn't be used to long stretches of being alone. "Would you like to sit?" she offered, indicating the concrete step she had occupied. "I was playing race cars." Eli glanced at his immaculate suit, then at the dusty step, then at Ava's earnest face. Without speaking, he sat beside her, carefully adjusting his trouser legs. "The blue car always wins," Ava explained solemnly, handing him the newer toy. "Because it's the fastest." "I see," Eli replied, holding the toy somewhat awkwardly. "Like this," Ava demonstrated, running her old toy along the sidewalk. "Your turn." Eli couldn't remember the last time he'd played with anything for fun, possibly never, but he imitated her motions, sliding the little car around. "Faster!" urged Ava, giggling. An involuntary smile spread across Eli's face. The sound of her laughter, the simple act of moving a toy car on the pavement, the unrestrained innocence of it all. It was chipping away at something inside him. For a few minutes, they raced their cars, with Ava narrating the entire event, full of imaginary obstacles and daring overtakes. Eli followed her directions, fascinated by the little girl's vivid imagination. "Did your dad like real cars too?" Eli asked when their race ended, with Ava's older toy car winning, of course. Ava's face shone. He knew everything. He could hear a car engine and tell what was wrong. It was like magic. "Sounds like he was pretty talented. Mom says he was the best mechanic in town," Ava replied proudly, then lowered her voice as if sharing a secret. "He was a hero, you know." Something in her tone, so certain and admiring, made Eli lean forward. "A hero? In what way?" "He saved people," Ava explained simply. "One time, I saw him bring a man out of a totally wrecked car. The man was bleeding." She frowned, thinking, Dad came home that night with his clothes all bloody. Mom got angry, but then she cried and hugged him a lot. A chill went down Eli's spine. "You saw that?" Ava nodded. "I didn't see him rescue the man, just when he got home. But Dad was always saving people, and cars. Mom says now he's an angel, watching over us from up there." She glanced toward the sky. "You miss him a lot, don't you?" Her smile faded slightly. "Every day, especially when Mom cries in the bathroom. She thinks I don't know, but I can hear." The honesty cut deep. So much sorrow in such a small child's words, and so calmly expressed. "It sounds like your father was a wonderful man," Eli said softly, surprised by the emotion in his own voice. "He was the best dad in the whole world," Ava responded, unwavering. "One day I'll fix cars just like him." Eli studied her tiny hands, so resolute. He'd spent his entire life measuring people by how they could benefit his ambitions. Yet this child had him questioning everything. "I'm sure you'll be a great mechanic," he said sincerely. Ava rewarded him with a radiant smile. For a moment, Eli felt as though he'd turned a page in a book he didn't know he was writing, a page about rediscovering his own humanity. "Is your mom going to be gone much longer?" he asked, noticing the sky beginning to darken. She shrugged. "Today she cleans Mrs. Hoffman's house after working at the restaurant. She comes home when it's already dark." The thought of leaving a small child alone in a dangerous neighborhood until nightfall bothered Eli. He looked toward Julian, who waited in the car, and made a snap decision. "I think I'll wait until your mother gets back," he offered, surprising even himself. "If you don't mind." Ava's face lit up. "We can play more." "Of course." They spent the next hour alternating between toy car races, looking through Ava's few dolls and second-hand books. Eli listened with total focus as she rattled off her stories. Her father had died a year ago, and she'd had to stop attending school because money ran short. But she was hungry to learn and bubble over with curiosity. Finally, at dusk, they heard weary footsteps on the path outside. Ava jumped up. "Mom's here." A slim woman in a worn waitress uniform appeared, juggling a purse and a plastic bag. She looked exhausted, but her expression snapped to alertness at the sight of a stranger standing by her home, instantly stepping protectively in front of Ava. "Who are you?" she demanded, voice full of fatigue and distrust. Eli got to his feet, acutely aware of his expensive suit and how out of place it seemed here. "Mom, this is Mr. Eli," Ava intervened. He's from the blue car place. He brought my toy car back. Rachel frowned with confusion. Eli Walker, he said, offering his hand. I met Ava a few days ago at the Premium Motors dealership. A dealership? Rachel shot a stern look at her daughter. Ava, you left the house? The little girl lowered her head, suddenly shy. I saw a blue car and wanted to follow it. I'm sorry, Mommy. Rachel exhaled wearily. We'll talk about that later. Then she asked Eli, Mr. Walker, I don't understand what you're doing here. How did you find our address? Her guarded tone was understandable. A well-dressed stranger from a fancy dealership in her rundown neighborhood could only mean trouble, or at best, pity she had no use for. I get your concern, Mrs. Lane, Eli said calmly. I can explain everything if we could speak for a few minutes. Rachel hesitated for a good while, assessing him warily, then nodded curtly. Ava, go wash your hands. Mr. Walker and I need to talk. But Mom, now please. Ava went inside, casting a last worried glance at Eli. Are you going to come back? Ava, Rachel chastised. Once the child disappeared, Rachel folded her arms across her chest, defensive. Mr. Walker, I don't know who you are or what you want, but I need to be clear. I don't need charity or... That's not it, Eli said softly. Ava visited that dealership while I was there. The manager treated her badly. I stepped in. We talked about her father, about cars. He paused. She lent me the toy car. I came here to give it back. Rachel arched a brow, unconvinced. And you needed to find out our address to do that. I admit my approach is unusual, but something about Ava, about her story. Eli ran a hand through his hair, a small gesture of nerves he rarely showed. Could we talk inside? What I have to say might be important for you both. Rachel considered him in silence, then sighed. 5 minutes, she said, letting him step in. Only because Ava seems to like you. The house was clean but obviously worn. Furniture was second-hand. The couch had patches. Paint was flaking on the walls. Yet evidence of love was everywhere. Ava's drawings proudly taped up, a little plant by the window, a handful of family photos in old frames. Ava, bring your plate to the kitchen, Rachel called. With Ava out of earshot, Eli spotted a framed photo, a man with a broad smile, holding a younger Ava on his shoulders. He wore a plaid shirt and grinned into the camera. Eli felt the air leave his lungs. His hands started trembling. Mr. Walker, Rachel noticed his reaction, confused. Is something wrong? It's him, Eli whispered, voice suddenly hoarse, pointing at the picture. Marcus, your husband. She nodded warily. Yes, how do you know his name? Eli couldn't tear his eyes from the photo. That face, he recognized it, not from the frame but from a memory buried for 5 years. I met him, Eli managed to say. 5 years ago, he saved my life. Rachel went still. What? Eli turned to face her, tears in his eyes for the first time in years. I had an accident. My car flipped on a back road during a storm. I was stuck inside bleeding, and the vehicle began to catch fire. He paused, struggling. I thought that was it, that I was going to die there. Ava, who had come to the room unnoticed, listened quietly, her eyes wide. Then someone appeared. It was pouring, so I hardly saw him. He yanked the door open, pulled me out. I remember his hands, strong, calloused, and his voice, telling me it would be okay. Rachel covered her mouth with one hand. Marcus never told me the details. He dragged me away from the wreck, called for help on my phone. I passed out. When I came to in the hospital, he was gone. The paramedic said he wouldn't give his name, just said he had to go home. They called him a good Samaritan. Eli inhaled shakily. I spent years trying to block out that night. The near-death experience terrified me. But when I saw Ava at the dealership, the mention of her dad, the toy car, something started nagging at me. Then seeing that picture, he shook his head in disbelief. It's him. Marcus Lane saved my life. Rachel slowly sank into a chair, like her legs might give out. He came home late that night, I remember worrying because it wasn't like him to not call. He was soaking wet hands with blood on his clothes. Dad was a hero, Ava said softly, stepping closer. I told you. Rachel pulled her daughter into a hug, eyes locked on Eli. Marcus mentioned a few days after that he'd helped someone in an accident, said he didn't even know the person's name, and left when the ambulance arrived. He just hoped the guy in the fancy car made it. It was an Aston Martin, Eli said softly, totaled beyond repair. He never learned who you were, Rachel continued, her voice steadier. But he said he was glad to have been in the right place at the right time. Eli felt a tear slip down his cheek, the first in ages. I owe my life to him. That accident changed me. It made me realize how fleeting life is. I launched my company soon after. It's built a new empire, but he never knew. And he never asked for anything, Rachel murmured, shaking her head sadly. To Marcus, it was just another day, just another person in need. He saved me in every sense, gave me a second chance. Eli's voice was unsteady. I've become who I am because of him. And he never found out, Rachel whispered. To him, it was one more rescue. Dad helped everybody, Ava added, wise in that simple, childlike way. Even when he was tired. A heavy pause filled the air, two lives intersecting in a way neither expected. Marcus Lane, a humble mechanic, linked their worlds forever. He never knew the impact of that night, and now, the man he saved stood face to face with his family. Now I understand why I couldn't stop thinking about Ava, Eli said gently. Why I had this feeling I needed to find her. There are no coincidences, just connections we haven't figured out yet. Rachel gave a faint smile, tears in her own eyes. Marcus used to say there weren't any coincidences, just unrecognized encounters. The weight in the room was palpable, the gratitude, the debt that couldn't be repaid, and the start of something neither had anticipated. Eli barely slept again that night. The revelations pounded in his mind like unrelenting waves. Marcus Lane, the man who saved his life, had a family, a daughter, who were now struggling. He showed up at his office early, sifting through important documents. Julian arrived right on time and was surprised to see Eli already there. Good morning, sir. I didn't expect you in so soon. Eli didn't look up. Julian, I need you to buy some things for me. Of course. Something for the board meeting? No. Eli glanced up. I need toys. Julian blinked. Toys, Mirmar, sir. For Ava Lane, nothing extravagant. A small stuffed animal, a storybook, and a blue toy car. Also, clear my afternoon appointments. Yes, sir, said Julian, recovering quickly from his surprise. I'll see to it. That afternoon, Eli once again headed to Westridge, with a discreet paper bag in the passenger seat. Inside were a small teddy bear, a children's book, and a slightly bigger, more detailed blue toy car than the ones Ava already had, but not fancy or expensive. As he approached the Lane house, Eli felt a knot in his stomach. It wasn't the typical tension before a big negotiation or shareholders' meeting. It was simpler and more primal, the anxious uncertainty of how he would be received. He parked and observed the house in daylight. Its flaws were more obvious now, missing shingles and worn paint. Usually he'd view a property's worth in market terms. Now he realized a home's value couldn't always be measured in money. Ava was on the sidewalk again, this time drawing on the pavement with chalk. She wore the same threadbare dress, her hair tied into a single lopsided braid. When Eli stepped out, she instantly noticed, her face lit up, and she ran to him. You came back, she announced, stopping a few feet away, beaming. I did, he said, struggling with sudden nerves, and I brought you something. He offered her the bag, which she accepted gently. She peeked inside, eyes growing round with excitement. She lifted the toy car first, holding it with reverence. It's so pretty, she whispered, rotating it to admire every detail. And it's blue like my others. I thought it would match your collection. Smiling, Ava placed it next to her other two toy cars resting on the curb. Now I have 3. Next, she pulled out the tiny teddy bear and hugged it, then flipped through the pages of the storybook, studying the colorful pictures. When she was done, she looked up seriously, almost like an adult. Will you come back more often? The question was simple but laden with meaning. Eli felt it instantly. It wasn't just curiosity, it was the question of a child who'd endured loss and understood people could disappear. So he stooped down, kneeling on the ground, ignoring the dust that would ruin his pant legs and surely horrify his tailor. I'd like to visit Ava, because your dad saved me, and I want to help you and your mum, not out of pity, but because it's the right thing to do. Ava regarded him with her wide eyes. Promise. Eli knew the weight of promises. In his world, everything was about signed contracts, sealed deals, and guaranteed outcomes. But a promise to a little girl held a different kind of power. I promise, he said, aware he meant it. Movement on the porch drew his attention. Rachel stood at the door, wearing faded jeans and a plain shirt, hair in a messy bun. She looked tired, but her eyes were watchful. Eli stood up, meeting her gaze with genuine respect. He felt the distance between them, not just physically but in upbringing, experiences and privilege. Her distance he felt compelled to bridge. Morning, he said softly, trying not to be imposing. Rachel came down the porch steps, glancing from him to Ava. I didn't expect to see you again so soon. I want you to know this is all out of gratitude, Eli said, getting straight to the point. Marcus rescued me, and for years I had no idea who he was. Now that I do, I can't just do nothing. I don't want to invade your life, but I want to offer you whatever help you'll accept. He spoke with a sincerity he rarely allowed himself in business. The typical ice prince facade would be counterproductive and insincere here. Rachel studied him at length, seeming to see right through him in a way that made him oddly exposed. Finally, she gave a slight nod. Not a total endorsement, but an openness to the possibility. Ava needs to bring her new things inside, she said, gently dismissing the girl. The child looked between them anxiously. You're not leaving, are you? Not yet, Eli promised. I'm going to chat with your mom. Relieved, Ava stepped inside. But before she did, she briefly squeezed Eli's hand, with an ease that startled him. Such a simple gesture, yet it resonated powerfully. Once alone, Rachel folded her arms defensively. Mr. Walker, Eli, please. Eli, she repeated, I respect your gratitude, but I want to be clear, we don't need charity. That's not what I'm offering, he said calmly. I'm offering my presence, my time, my attention, the things money can't buy. Her features relaxed slightly. Ava seems to trust you. She hasn't warmed to strangers easily since Marcus. Rachel's voice caught. I'm not here to replace him, Eli assured her. No one could. A loaded silence followed, not uncomfortable but brimming with the unspoken. In the background, they could hear Ava chattering happily with her new book in the living room. She stays alone while you work, Eli observed, not accusing but stating a fact. Rachel nodded, guilt flitting across her face. No choice. Daycare is expensive. A babysitter too. I've tried, I just can't afford it. I can help with that. We don't want handouts, Rachel repeated, her pride stiffening. It's not a handout to pay a debt, Eli said gently. A debt I can never truly repay. Rachel looked at him, truly looked, for the first time. You're wealthy, aren't you? I don't mean just the car or the suit. I can tell by the way you speak. Eli didn't deny it. Yes, I am. And you want to help us because of what Marcus did. Exactly. Rachel inhaled, thinking, I don't know how to handle this. All I've done this last year is try to survive day by day. There was a dignity in her candor that Eli found admirable. You don't have to decide now, he said kindly. We can take it slow, one step at a time. Ava appeared at the door, hugging her new teddy bear. Mom, can I show Mr. Eli my drawings? Rachel gave a small nod, meeting Eli's gaze again. A quiet acceptance, albeit cautious, allowing this new presence in their lives. I guess we have time for that. So in that modest house, a new bond began to form, not with great fanfare or big declarations, but through simple presence. Eli, a man unused to anything but high-stakes deals, found himself on the living room floor, earnestly looking through a child's drawings. Rachel observed warily at first, but gradually relented, letting the moment unfold. A link was forged that day, silent yet meaningful. Eli's routine gradually changed in a way none of his colleagues could have anticipated. 3 afternoons a week. The CEO, who was known for precise meeting schedules and million-dollar deals, instead parked his expensive car in West Ridge, spending hours with a little girl. At first, he visited briefly. Eli brought modest gifts, a simple puzzle, a small box of crayons, a children's book, never anything lavish, respecting Rachel's boundaries. Rachel observed these changes cautiously. From the kitchen door, while preparing a simple dinner, she watched the two of them on the porch, Eli listening intently to Ava's fanciful stories, answering her endless questions without condescension. "Do you have kids, Mr. Eli?" Ava asked one day, flipping through a dinosaur book. "No," he answered, surprised. "Oh, why not?" Eli paused. "I guess I was always too busy with other things." "Adult stuff." "Yes, adult stuff," he replied with a small smile. As days turned into weeks, these visits became normal. The child who had grown so reserved after her father's death once again became curious, giggly, open. Her laughter, which Rachel feared might never come back, now resounded through the house. One afternoon, Eli suggested, "There's a small park nearby. We can go if your mum says it's okay." Rachel hesitated but agreed. The park was unassuming, a few swings, a slide, an open grassy space. Ava ran ahead, while Eli followed, discreetly smiling. They spent hours there. Eli pushed her on the swing, higher than Rachel normally allowed, but with careful hands. Then they chatted about car engines and how they worked, picking up crunchy autumn leaves scattered about. "This looks like a car," Ava said, holding a leaf shaped vaguely like a car silhouette. "You're right," Eli grinned. "Could be a convertible." At one point, he pretended to be a monster chasing her between the trees. They collapsed in laughter on a bench, Ava's cheeks pink from the crisp air. She leaned against Eli's arm as if it were the most natural thing in the world. He felt a strange twinge in his chest. Not pain, but a powerful emotion he could scarcely name. "What do you think your dad would say if he saw us now?" Eli asked without thinking. Ava gazed at the clouds. "He'd say you're a good friend, like he was." The simplicity of that answer rocked him. He, who had been called a shark, ruthless, a corporate predator, was being seen by this child as a good friend. Those words echoed in his mind as they returned Ava home to Rachel, who was waiting at the door. Later that night, after Ava was asleep, Eli found himself sitting in the small kitchen with Rachel, 2 chipped mugs of cheap tea between them. "I never really told anyone about the accident," he began, "what it felt like." Rachel simply listened, giving him space. "I was driving too fast. It was rainy. I lost control, flipped 3 times. When the car stopped, I was pinned, bleeding, and smelled gasoline." He paused, the memory still raw. "I thought, this is how it ends. But what really scared me was realizing I had nothing meaningful to leave behind. A pile of money, some properties, an up-and-coming business, but nothing truly important." Rachel absorbed this silently. Then Marcus appeared. I'll never forget the sensation of someone wrenching open that door. Those strong hands pulling me out, that voice telling me I'd be fine. He didn't know who I was. He didn't care. I was just a person who needed help. Eli took a trembling breath. Afterward, I swore to live each day fully, each day. I worked harder, earned more, but I think I still missed the core lesson. Rachel gave him a gentle smile, a real one this time. Marcus had that effect. It wasn't about what he said. It was what he did. For the first time, Rachel began sharing her own stories, how she had met Marcus at the auto shop after her broken-down car was towed in, how he'd fixed it cheaply, and later asked her for coffee. She talked about his dream of opening his own garage, about the jokes he'd make on Sunday mornings, about the effortless way he approached life. They shared recollections of a man who'd changed both their paths, one with his life rescued, the other with a love still echoing in the present. "You're not just repaying him," Rachel eventually concluded. "You're continuing what he started." Those words pierced something in Eli. The next morning, in his sleek corner office, he made a decision. Summoning a team of lawyers and accountants, he tasked them with one specific goal: find and clear all the Lane family's debt accrued after Marcus's passing. He did it quietly, respectfully. Funeral costs, overdue bills, late rent, all of it handled discreetly with no conditions attached. Eli knew Rachel wouldn't accept direct handouts, but he also knew these financial burdens weighed her down daily. Finally, he visited Ava's old school. Explaining the situation in broad strokes, he set up a complete scholarship for Ava to return immediately and remain through high school if she wished. These gestures, Eli thought, were small compared to what he'd received. Another chance at life, but they were a start. Rachel noticed changes before she understood them. First came letters from the school saying Ava's tuition was covered, from the bank confirming funeral debt was paid, from the landlord stating her rent was current. Initially, she reacted with shock, then anger. The next time Eli visited, she confronted him. "You had no right to do all this without telling me." Eli didn't deny or apologize. "Would you have agreed if I told you first?" Rachel said nothing, and they both knew the answer. "It isn't charity, Rachel. It's the least I owe." Her initial fury gradually melted into reluctant acceptance and, eventually, quiet relief. After more than a year, she finally slept without the crushing anxiety over debts. She could now think beyond tomorrow. Ava returned to school the following week. On the first day, Rachel walked her to the gates, watching her run to greet old friends, sporting a brand new backpack that Eli had left for her in passing. Returning home, Rachel wept tears of gratitude, not the bitter, hopeless kind, but the release of pent-up tension. Eli kept his promise, continuing to visit, but never intruding. Sometimes he only popped by to drop off a book or to chat briefly about Ava's latest lessons. Other times he stayed longer, but always respectful of their space. There were no grand public gestures, no showy rescues. Instead, it was a steady drip of small help. The broken fridge replaced without fuss, the leaky roof quietly fixed by a contractor friend, the doctor who happened to be in the area to look at Ava's cough. Bit by bit, he helped, mindful of Rachel's dignity. She realized he understood something vital. They didn't just need financial help, but respect. About a month later, on a Sunday afternoon, Eli arrived with a suggestion. "I'd like to take you both somewhere, if that's all right." "Where?" Rachel asked, cautious as ever. "Lakeside Park. Ava mentioned Marcus used to bring her there." She hesitated. The park held precious memories with Marcus. Would it be too painful to go back with another man? But she saw sincere interest in Eli's eyes, not pity. So she agreed. The park hadn't changed. A small lake with ducks, wooden benches, winding paths beneath old trees. Ava ran ahead, recognizing all the spots she'd played in with her father. "Over there," Ava cried, pointing to a big tree. "That's where we had picnics." Rachel recalled those times. Marcus always brought peanut butter and jelly sandwiches for her. "What about you?" Eli asked. "He made an incredible grilled cheese and tomato sandwich," she said, realizing she could say it now without pain overshadowing the memories. They settled under the same tree, as Ava insisted. Eli had packed a simple basket with fruit, sandwiches, and water, nothing showy, just enough. As they ate, Rachel found herself telling stories of how Marcus used to hum off-key tunes while he worked. "He had a terrible singing voice," she laughed. "But he was so happy doing it, you couldn't help but smile. He did silly voices when he read me stories," Ava chipped in, chewing an apple, "a different voice for every character." Eli listened, as he always did, with genuine interest. It struck Rachel how he never seemed bored or inattentive when they shared these simple family tales, so far from his slick business world. "What would he say when he fixed things?" Eli asked. Ava giggled. "He'd talk to them. 'Come on, buddy, work with me,' he'd say. He'd also tap them gently, like encouragement," Rachel recalled, smiling. "Seemed like nonsense, but it worked. He had a knack for machines." The late afternoon sun glowed on the lake. Ava approached the water's edge, giggling at the ducks. Eli took an envelope from his jacket and offered it to Rachel. "What's this?" she asked, wary. "Receipts, paid in full, and all your documents, neatly organized, and something else, a college fund for Ava." Rachel felt the weight of the envelope, physically and symbolically. "Eli, I'm not sure I can—" "I want you to be at peace," he said softly. "That's what he gave me that night. Life. This is the only way I know how to repay." The sincerity in his eyes broke down her resistance. No pity, no condescension, just genuine care. Ava bounded back at that moment, cuddling her new stuffed animal. Rachel discreetly slid the envelope aside. "Are you guys sad?" Ava asked, always tuned into emotions. "No, sweetheart," Rachel reassured, kissing her head. "Sometimes grown-ups cry when they're happy." Eli pulled out one more item from his bag, a nice hardcover sketch pad with thick pages. "For you, Ava, so you can draw anything you like. Cars, dreams, your story." Her eyes lit up. She ran her hand over the textured cover. "It's the prettiest notebook in the whole world," she declared. "Maybe you can show me how you draw cars," Eli suggested. "I need some help with that." Ava nodded solemnly, already opening it to the first page. She lay on the grass and began drawing, explaining to Eli how to make the wheels round and the windows just right. Rachel watched them, feeling something in her chest loosen. It wasn't that the pain disappeared. Marcus's absence still hurt, but for the first time, she felt it was possible to keep living and remember Marcus without drowning in sorrow. As the sun set behind the trees, Ava kept drawing, occasionally showing Eli her progress. It was the first time she'd ever drawn side by side with another adult besides her mom. Rachel realized a new chapter was beginning for all three of them, not with grand gestures or official statements, but through simple acts: a casual picnic, stories shared, an envelope of important papers, a gentle daily care that came from understanding the worth of what was lost and the worth of what could still be found. Seasons shifted. Summer gave way to fall, and fall hinted that winter was nearing. Wordlessly, Eli's presence became a fixture, 3 times a week, as always. His discreet car pulled up near the small house. Neighbors soon got used to seeing the well-dressed man visiting the widow and her daughter. "Mr. Eli," Ava would greet him, wearing her uniform proudly since she'd returned to school. "I have math homework today. Can you help me?" Rachel watched from the kitchen while cooking dinner, and it no longer felt awkward. Eli, once an intruder, was now welcomed. She found his consistent presence oddly comforting. Sitting at the worn kitchen table, he would guide Ava through her lessons. He showed remarkable patience, re-explaining problems without losing his composure. "That's not how the teacher taught us," Ava would protest. "There's more than one way to solve it," Eli would reply calmly. "Let's try your teacher's way first, and then I can show you another." Small, simple interactions that had a large impact. Ava, who had grown withdrawn, was again the inquisitive, vibrant child she used to be. Her laughter, nearly lost, was back and reverberating through their home. Some nights, after Ava went to bed, Eli and Rachel would chat at the kitchen table. She'd talk about her day, her memories, her concerns about Ava. He listened, really listened, a skill that amazed her, given how busy he supposedly was. "What was your life like before you met us?" Rachel asked one evening. Eli paused. "Busy, productive, empty." The sincerity caught Rachel off guard. She knew his public persona well enough from web searches. He was the cold, impeccably dressed CEO with an unyielding reputation. This candidness felt like a privilege. "And now," she ventured, "different, more real," he answered simply, and she didn't push for more. They had come to an unspoken understanding. One chilly Wednesday, Eli arrived with a small box of professional colored pencils that made Ava's face light up. "So many colors," she exclaimed in wonder. "I noticed you're filling that sketchbook fast," Eli said. "I thought you might need these." She nodded. "I want to show you my new drawing." Off she ran, returning with the sketchbook. The first pages were filled with pictures of cars, houses, little stick figures. She flipped to a page in the middle. "I drew it last night," she said proudly. Eli looked at the image and felt something twist inside. It was a bright blue car, larger and more detailed than previous drawings. Inside it were 3 people, a long-haired woman driving, a small child in the back seat, and a man in a suit in the passenger seat. She had labeled it, in her big, unsteady letters, "Mommy, me and Dad's friend. It's really nice, Ava, he said, his voice slightly tight. We're going on a drive, she explained, like that day in the park. Eli could only nod, lacking the right words. He glanced at Rachel, who'd come over to see. Their eyes met. They shared a fleeting moment of mutual understanding. I'm going to keep it forever, Ava said, closing the book gently. Like Daddy's toy cars. Later that night, once Eli had gone and Ava slept, Rachel found the sketchbook. Sitting at the table alone, she opened to the page with the blue car. Mommy, me and Dad's friend. So straightforward, so honest. Tears slipped down her cheeks, but they weren't solely of grief. That phrase captured exactly how she felt. The life they were forging didn't erase Marcus's memory. No one could replace him, but there was room for new connections, new forms of affection, a future that included hope. Marcus would never be forgotten. His place was sacred, yet maybe there was space to keep living. Meanwhile, in his luxury high-rise downtown, Eli also reflected on Ava's picture. Dad's friend, not the rich man, not the benefactor, just Dad's friend, a role that connected him to something more meaningful than wealth or power. Julian noticed changes in his boss. The man who once lived solely for work started blocking off 3 afternoons weekly, no exceptions. The famously cold, inscrutable CEO now sometimes smiled for no apparent reason. The Ice Prince was beginning to thaw. Should I reschedule the Japanese investors for Thursday? Julian asked him once, aware that Wednesday afternoon was non-negotiable. Yes, Eli replied firmly. I have a more important commitment. No explanations, no apologies, just calm certainty. In high-stakes business meetings, Eli remained brilliant and strategic. Yet something had changed subtly. He listened more, interrupted less. He considered the human aspect of decisions, not only the bottom line. In one reorganization talk, he surprised everyone by asking about the families of employees who would be affected. For the first time in his adult life, Eli Walker felt connected to something beyond money and image. He wasn't just repaying a debt. He was learning to open up, to genuinely care, to be present. In his office, among the usual documents and reports, he kept a single framed picture, not of his business triumphs or massive properties, but a copy of Ava's drawing, the blue car with 3 people in it, a daily reminder of the new meaning he was discovering day by day. December came, bringing intense cold and holiday decorations around the neighborhood. Ava insisted on putting up a small Christmas tree at home. Rachel finally agreed. The first time in 2 years she'd felt any desire to celebrate. With Eli's help, they decorated a modest tree with simple ornaments, some handmade by Ava at school. The house felt warmer, more alive, as did they. Rachel no longer woke up with that crushing weight on her chest. She still mourned Marcus, especially in small moments each day, but the sorrow wasn't suffocating anymore. For the first time since Marcus's death, Rachel didn't dread the future. With debts resolved, Ava thriving in school and a calmer routine, she dared to think beyond mere survival. One night after Ava was asleep, Rachel and Eli sat outside on the small porch. The sky was clear, dotted with stars, and the quiet between them was companionable. Rachel clutched a mug of cheap tea mainly for its warmth rather than the taste. Sometimes, she said out of nowhere, I think Marcus would be proud of how Ava's handling everything, of how we're managing to move on. Eli nodded. I'm sure he would. He always said you have to keep living forward, no matter how hard things get. Rachel smiled softly at the memory. And life did get tough, even before the accident. She paused, sipping her tea. Some suppressed memory seemed to surface. Right before the accident, she began, her voice wavering, I found out I was pregnant. Eli silently turned to her, surprised. That wasn't what he'd expected. Rachel stared at some distant point, as if meeting his eyes would make it too hard to continue. I was going to tell him that night. I prepared a special meal, bought the tiniest baby shoes. But then came the knock at the door. The police. Everything changed. Eli said nothing, letting her proceed at her own pace, instinctively sensing the fragility of this confession. After he died, I lost the baby too. "It happened so fast," she said, voice trembling. "I never told anyone, not even my mother. It seemed easier to pretend it never happened." Tears rolled down her face then, not in desperate sobs but as a steady flow, like a dam finally giving way. So it wasn't just one loss, it was two. And I had no idea how to explain that to Ava, to anyone. I just kept it inside. She pressed a hand to her chest, indicating the burden she'd carried for so long. Eli, moved by an impulse deeper than logic, reached out and covered her hand with his. He said nothing, offered no trivial consolations, only presence, the simple but powerful act of staying. Rachel wept silently for a few minutes, tears flowing for both the husband and the child she'd lost. Unspoken pain she'd held in for over a year. That moment brought them closer than either expected, now bonded not just by Marcus's memory, but by the mourning Rachel had faced alone. "I'm sorry," she said finally, wiping her cheeks. "I don't know why I brought it up now." "Maybe it was time," Eli replied gently. She nodded, oddly lighter. "It still hurts. But telling someone helps, somehow." He squeezed her hand softly. "Sometimes, all we can do for someone is stay by their side." "Thank you for staying," Rachel whispered, her voice thick. Ever since losing Marcus and the baby nobody knew about, Rachel had lived in a silent, unending grief. Even while keeping up a brave front for Ava, she existed day to day with no vision for the future. But gradually, Ava's renewed happiness and Eli's thoughtful presence changed that. Seeing her daughter smile and play with Eli infused hope. Rachel found herself waking up with more energy, tidying the house more cheerfully, even cooking Ava's favorite meals. Yet she still felt a restlessness, a sense that she had no role beyond being a mother and living with her pain. Sensing that need, Eli asked her out for a talk a few days later. They strolled through a quiet city park, watching the birds and wind in the trees, and he gently proposed something he'd been planning for weeks. "Rachel, I have a philanthropic project to help families in vulnerable situations. I'm assembling a small team. I'd like you to join me. The hours are flexible and pay is good, so you can still be with Ava." She stopped walking, genuinely taken aback. She studied his face and suspecting pity or charity, but saw only genuine respect. "Do you really think I could do it?" she asked, her uncertainty plain. Eli offered a reassuring smile. "You're exactly the kind of person it needs, someone who understands, who cares." The idea hovered between them. Rachel considered her last few months, feeling invisible except for Ava's sake, locked in her sadness. The thought of being useful, recognized for who she was, both thrilled and terrified her. "Can I think about it?" "Take all the time you need." A week passed before she accepted, still uneasy, but determined to step forward. The first few days were daunting. New routines, new people, finding her voice in a role that wasn't the comfort of her home. But Rachel soon discovered that by helping other families in dire straits, she was also helping herself heal. Listening to their losses, offering comfort, brainstorming real solutions for seemingly impossible challenges. Each small success restored a bit of the confidence she'd lost. "How was today?" Eli would ask when picking her up at day's end. "Hard. Good. Real," she'd say, her eyes shining with a vigor he hadn't seen before. Ava watched her mother's transformation in awe. "Mum helps people like Dad used to help cars," she once said, in that simple childhood wisdom. Gradually, Rachel found identity and purpose beyond just survival. The scars remained, Marcus was gone, and the child she'd never met also haunted her. But those didn't define her entire existence anymore. One particularly hectic afternoon, Rachel was organizing donations for families displaced by a flood. She felt weary, her back aching from lifting boxes, but something else too, a deep contentment, a sense of purpose she thought lost. Pausing to catch her breath, she became aware of how steady and deep each inhale felt. No more suffocating heaviness. That crushing knot in her chest had eased. It wasn't gone forever. Some days, the ache still flared, but now she knew she could carry it without being crushed, especially after sharing it on that chilly night with Eli. Rachel closed her eyes, savoring this small, vital act, breathing freely. Then she went back to her tasks, step by step on the path she was building toward a renewed life. Saturday dawned crisp and bright, one of those rare winter days when the sun shines strongly despite the cold. Rachel woke to the sound of Ava humming in the bathroom, a habit that had returned recently. Normal sounds, daily life returning. "Are you sure you don't want to come with us?" Eli had asked the previous day, explaining he wanted to take Ava on a surprise outing. "Yes," Rachel had answered with a calm smile. "You two deserve some time together. Besides, I have some paperwork for the foundation to finish." The foundation. That's what she now called Eli's charity project. It wasn't just his anymore. It had become hers as well, fueling her sense of purpose. At 10, the doorbell rang. Ava rushed to open it, already wearing the new coat Eli had given her last month. "Mr. Eli," she exclaimed, hugging him briefly. Such small gestures of affection used to be foreign to him. "Where are we going today?" He smiled conspiratorially at Rachel. "It's a surprise, you'll see." Rachel watched them walk off, feeling confident that Ava was in good hands. She returned to her desk in the kitchen, sipping coffee and appreciating the quiet. Outside, Eli led Ava down the street. "We need to walk a bit," he explained, holding her small hand. "The surprise is just around the corner." Ava skipped along, excitedly chattering about her school project on making cars less polluting. Jackson said electric cars are stupid, but the teacher said no, and that one day all cars might be quiet and not make smoke, she prattled. "Your teacher's right," Eli said. "My company is—" he began, then laughed at himself. "Sorry, those are complicated grown-up details." Ava just giggled, used to how Eli sometimes caught himself explaining high-level stuff. Turning a corner, he stopped. "Close your eyes." "Why?" she asked, but complied anyway. "Trust me, I'll guide you." He led her a few steps on, positioning her carefully. "Okay, open them." Ava obeyed and froze. There on the curb sat a car. Not just any car, but a Phantom in navy blue. Exactly like the one they'd seen at the dealership months earlier. It gleamed under the winter sun, all smooth lines and shining paint. "It's just like my dad's," she breathed, eyes wide with awe. Eli smiled. "In fact, it's the exact same one. I bought it from the dealership." "You bought it?" Ava turned to him, both confused and delighted. "Yes," he said, pulling a key from his pocket, "and I thought maybe you'd like to go for a ride with me." Ava looked from the car to Eli, shock and excitement battling on her face. "Want to take a spin?" he invited, opening the passenger door. "Just you and me in honor of your dad." She hesitated only an instant before bounding forward. "Yes." Eli helped her climb in, double-checking the seatbelt. Then he slid behind the wheel, feeling a surge of emotion as he started the engine. It wasn't just another luxury car. To him, it was a symbol, a tribute to the man who'd saved his life, and a gateway to a little girl who had helped save him, in a whole different way. The Phantom purred quietly as they pulled away. Ava sat spellbound, gently touching the dashboard with her fingertips. "Where are we going?" she asked finally. "Wherever you want," Eli said. "It's your ride." Ava thought. "Can we go by Dad's old garage?" Eli was caught off guard. "Of course. Do you know the address?" "Yes, it's far, but I can tell you the way." So Ava guided him through the streets, proudly giving turn-by-turn instructions. She chattered non-stop about her school, her friends, and all the new things she was learning. "You know," she said suddenly, "I want to be a mechanic like Dad when I grow up, but also build cars that don't make smoke. Maybe I can be an astronaut too if I have free time." Eli laughed, loving the randomness of it. "Sounds like a great plan. Mom says I can be anything if I study hard." She's absolutely right. Ava grew silent for a moment, gazing out the window. When she spoke again, her tone was softer. "I miss Dad every day, especially in the mornings, because he always came in my room to say good morning with a funny voice." Eli felt a lump in his throat. "I bet he was the best dad ever." "The best," she affirmed, then surprised him by adding, "But I'm glad you're here, Mr. Eli." You listen to us, like he did. And you take care of us. Her simple words pierced his heart. He paused, unsure of how to respond, unaccustomed to such genuine gratitude. It's an honor to be with you, he finally managed. You and your mom have taught me a lot. What did we teach you? Asked Ava, curious. Eli pondered. To see what truly matters. Ava nodded gravely, as though it made perfect sense. Maybe it did. Kids often see truth more clearly than adults do. They arrived at Grayson & Sons, a modest shop closed for the weekend. The yard out front held a few cars awaiting service. Eli parked, leaving the engine running. That's where he used to work, Ava said, pointing to a corner of the garage. He had a table in there. Sometimes I sat and drew pictures while he fixed stuff. Eli pictured Marcus there in his element, an ordinary man simply doing what he loved, never suspecting he'd one day save a stranger who would change his family's fate. What do you think he'd say about this car? Eli asked. Ava beamed. He'd definitely want to see the engine first. That's what he did before everything else. We can pop the hood later if you want, her eyes sparkled. We can. Sure, I bet you know more about engines than I do. Pulling away, they cruised aimlessly around the city. Ava fiddled with the radio, finding a peppy station, and they both sang along badly but happily. As dusk crept in, the dash lights glowed gently, reflecting in Ava's wide eyes like tiny stars. She kept talking, telling more stories about her dad, about the new puppy a neighbor had, about her future dreams that now felt possible again. And Eli, behind the wheel of this car he'd purchased for reasons beyond status, realized he wasn't just driving. He was forging a new story, one built from broken fragments that now fit together in unexpected ways. Past memories, future hopes, new attachments. A story that didn't erase what came before, but found a way to build upon it, like a road that keeps going even after a sharp curve. As the Phantom's headlights cut through the gathering dark, Eli Walker, once Ice Prince, once the man who measured life in profit margins, felt truly at peace. Not because he'd cleared a debt, but because in doing so, he'd discovered something far greater, a genuine purpose for that second chance granted by Marcus Lane long ago. And in that quiet hum of the engine, with Ava's chatter filling the car, he knew he was exactly where he needed to be. The road ahead might hold more bends and challenges, but now he had something he'd never truly possessed before, a sense of belonging, of connection, of family. Weeks slipped by, and the vibrant life swirling around the lane home, and in Eli's own heart only grew stronger. Rachel's new job at the foundation thrived. Ava continued to excel in school. Sometimes, Rachel would bake simple treats and invite Eli to share, laughter ringing in that small living room that once felt weighed down by grief. It wasn't that Marcus was forgotten. Quite the opposite, his memory remained a cherished presence, guiding them all in different ways. Every so often, Eli would glance at the photograph of Marcus in the hallway. He'd silently thank the man for giving him the precious gift of life, and for indirectly guiding him to discover the intangible, irreplaceable aspects he'd been missing. Watching Rachel and Ava together, he found a deeper fulfillment than any profitable merger or expensive acquisition had ever provided. Step by step, a broken family found new reasons to hope, and a lonely billionaire found the humanity he'd locked away. And so, on a cold winter morning, a small blue toy car sat on Eli's desk as he prepared for another day. Once an insignificant trinket from a little girl's pocket, it had become a symbol of second chances, the power of small acts of kindness, and the unbreakable bond between a father's memory and those left behind. The wheels of life kept turning, and in that steady rhythm, they all discovered that even the deepest sorrow could be gently transformed into hope and love. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next ones. Leave a like because it helps this story get recommended to more people. See you in the next story.